Hello and welcome back to the She Gallery Show. Thank you for being with us tonight. We are here with TSEL. TSEL 1, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And you are live with us tonight as well. Please remember that you can join this conversation by calling the number that is found on the bottom of the screen and will be on the bottom of the screen for the remainder of the segment. That is 312-738-1060. And please remember that you can always visit our website at sharinghisenergygallery.net. That's sharinghisenergygallery.net. All right. So we are here tonight with a very special guest, truly marking history. And I just want to start off by reflecting on last night's segment with Windy City Live. There was an episode that was dedicated to, or was meant to be dedicated to the graffiti, what was called the graffiti renaissance. And in watching this segment and watching that they had a lot of street artists that were featured in this graffiti renaissance. So I just want to pinpoint that there is a big difference between graffiti and street art. And here tonight we have a true innovating graffiti artist that has been involved with this movement since the very early 80s. Here we have the Age of Innocence, the mystery writing. Can you please talk to us a little bit about your background and what this mystery writing is all about?
Okay, thank you for having me. My name is Nino Rodriguez. My graffiti name is TSEL 1. I was born in Mexico in 1972. We were brought here to the United States in 1976. I grew up on the north side of Chicago in Uptown. I attended the Stockton Elementary School, Jonah Farai Middle School, and eventually graduated from Sun Academy in 1991. I attended American Academy of Art, UIC, and finally graduated from Columbia College in 2005. But my passion is graffiti art. I've been painting graffiti art since 1984. My brother taught it to me. He brought it from school. He said these kids are doing this mystery writing in school. I thought they invented it at school. I told all my friends in the neighborhood, hey, look what they invented at this high school, which was not right. It was wrong. It was not the proper information. However, these kids had fancy writing. It was different from all the writing that was on the wall. All the writing that I ever saw on the wall was gang-related, gang symbolism, and gang iconography. But this was totally different. The names were innocent names. Some were funny names. The writing was very cursive, was very elegant. And I said, I told my brother the first question, what gang are they in? And he said, no, these kids are not in gangs. They don't believe in that. This is totally different. You pick a name, you choose a name, and you stylize it, and then you throw it out, and everybody else can see it. So I said, what? Great idea. I chose a name. I started putting it up, and then from there, it's history.
Mm-hmm. And there we go. And he just mentioned something that really highlights the difference between graffiti and street art. I think a lot of people today think that just by using a spray can, if you make art with spray can, with using that kind of art, that it's graffiti, and it's not. Graffiti is stylized fonts, and that's what that is. And to really challenge the style. So talk to us about your journey. First off, you always liked making art. You've made art since you were a child. But there was something that happened when you were 5 years old that made you realize, I like winning. And then this competition thing came in.
Right. So back at Stockton Elementary School, they had a competition, or they were just going to say we have an art fair. And they wanted us to draw something on paper. I decided to draw a fish in a bowl because I thought that it would look cool. And I made it really clean. I made it my own style, and we submitted it for my part for the kindergartners, and I won the first prize, blue ribbon for all the kindergartners in Stockton. Everybody was happy. My teacher, the excitement, the joy in her face. To know that I created something and I can get a reaction, a positive reaction. And it made people happy. So knowing that I can draw something, create something, and get a reaction, it kind of made me happy.
Mm-hmm. And you continue to do that?
I continue to do it. And there is a difference between graffiti writing and what I do in street art. I've never cut out paper and use that for spray paint wise and make stencils. That's a different style. I strictly use spray paint from day one, since 1984, markers, to use to my advantage to create my art.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you will get to learn a little bit more about TSEL's art He does practice more than graffiti art, and you went to art school, so there was a lot of this influence as well. You want to talk to us a little bit about that?
No, absolutely. I went to the American Academy of Art in 1992, and it was funny because there was a lot of graffiti writers there. And I guess we were just trying to use our art to expand ourselves. We weren't really trying to use the school to enhance our graffiti art or graffiti career. We just wanted to develop our art. I learned a lot about life art, still art, portraits. That's what they taught a lot of. And it was funny because there was a lot of graffiti writers there. Just learning about fine arts and how to develop your own skills using the tools that were given.
And this is back then, and do you still work or see any of these graffiti artists now?
Oh yes, all the time. They're still around. I still talk to them, and they're still doing their thing.
And there's something about graffiti that does that. Like what he was mentioning, influencing each other, helping each other. And it's kind of funny because even though graffiti is one of the elements of hip-hop, and we know that in hip-hop there's a lot of battling and competition, but yet you're helping each other out, creating new styles and things like that to help each other battle and compete. So it's like the friendliest type of competition that you can have that does not involve fighting or violence. And it inspires so much to unite and to challenge yourself to develop a brand new style. Do you want to talk to us about some of these pieces that we have here? Super curious.
Yeah, absolutely. This particular one is one of my favorites. It was for an art show.
Can you see it?
That I don't think I submitted it. I just created it, but I don't think I made it the final part of it. So I made a can of spray paint, an actual can. I cleaned it up, colored it up, and then I did one of my graffiti pieces on there. And this little guy represents me, so it's a representation of myself.
Can you flip it up that way?
Let's see. Well, you can probably see it like that.
Can you see?
And then you can see the little graffiti writer there.
Those
That's
are
me.
Legos, guys.
Right, and then I put Lego pieces there, and then this guy's my little my backup homie, as you can see. And then of course, you got to add the rat. So it's something, a little bit of aesthetics and how to put something together with graffiti art and pieces that you can find to make an original work of art. And then of course we have trains. This is a freight train. And of course, everybody always loves painting trains. And this particular one is just a freight train example. And then this other one is an Aztec piece. This is more of a different style of graffiti art. This isn't graffiti at all. It's more of cultural art. But as you can see, the elements of art and of the graffiti art, you could see some of the styles, the bubbles, the swirls, the clouds, and then some of the movement. But of course, this is all cultural Aztec art on a train, small model.
And just as you mentioned, there's movement, so with a lot of the graffiti fonts, with that, there's movement, there's style, there's flow. And that piece, even though it's not a font, you could still see all of those elements of graffiti found within. And then you use your roots. You always come back with your roots within your style. So we'll check out some of his artwork in a minute so you can get a little bit more of an example of what that is. And what is this here?
This one's actually a S.H.E beer bottle.
Oh, wow.
So
Upcycle.
Yeah, you got to recycle. You got to let's see if we can put it right here. So it's just a beer bottle. I dropped some spray paint on it from the top, let it drip down,
beautiful.
and then just added my own Aztec art. This is actually a cut-up piece of paper, just to try something different. This is completely different from street art because I would never want to post this on a wall. This is just for personal style. So this would be totally different from what street art would be.
And again, we have elements from your roots.
Oh, absolutely. And then speaking of style too, when it comes to graffiti style, and some people have having a discussion on what Chicago style graffiti as opposed to New York style graffiti. Really, Chicago doesn't really have a Chicago style. However, you can still point out elements of Chicago in graffiti. Some of these swirls like this can only be found in Chicago. Some of these hooks like this can only be found in Chicago style graffiti. You'll see them around the world, other writers, but some of these elements that are included are only seen in Chicago, especially earlier graffiti writers, From my generation, I've used this style many times over. You could tell that's like, oh, that's a city, that's a Chicago style. That's just some of the things that I've noticed about Chicago style graffiti and how some things that stand out amongst our roots and our culture more than others around the world.
Thank you so much for sharing that. These are things that the average person doesn't even think about. Only graffiti artists do.
It's true.
And as mentioning earlier, a lot of these graffiti artists network together, form up crews, and these crews help develop more styles, get walls, produce. You want to talk to us about your roles with your crews and what the difference between being a North Sider and being a South Sider and how you've become all city, which is not something that a lot of graffiti artists do.
Speaking of crews, people choose to be in a crew. You don't have to be in a crew. It's all about your choice. Crews do definitely help you out. They can definitely get you out there. They can definitely develop your style and produce a piece together collectively. There are a lot of strong crews out there that have been around for over 20 years. They've done a lot of work out there, a lot of production, a lot of piecing, a lot of legal work. And of course, there's also tagging crews out there that they have no reason why they want to paint murals or paint graffiti on walls. They'd rather just stick to tagging, which is fine. My interpretation is I'd rather just do what I want to do. You can definitely choose a crew and be in a crew and be part of a crew and be part of something bigger. However, I like sticking to what I like to do and influence others just through my art rather than physically being there. You can definitely physically be there with your friends and do graffiti art that way. However, I choose sometimes just to stay on my own and do my work. However, I do influence a lot of people by just the work, and that's kind of what I want to do. I always let the work speak for itself rather than me telling you what the work is, and that's kind of always been my interpretation of what graffiti is.
Okay, all right. So we are going to share some of TSEL's work and some of these stories that this work has brought on. One other thing that I wanted to mention, we were talking about the gangs and the graffiti, and when it was the age of the innocence, and you were like, well, what gang are they? Automatically thinking, growing up in some of these neighborhoods in Chicago, that you have to be like some kind of a gang because that's the only kind of graffiti that they saw on the walls. The difference between gang graffiti and graffiti, art graffiti, or the element of the hip hop graffiti is that it is stylized fonts. And then I always want to come back to really share how much graffiti helped a lot of these kids in these neighborhoods get out of gangs or not have the option to be a gangbanger. A lot of people think that, oh, why would that kid choose to be a gangbanger? Not realizing that you choose to be either folks or people, which is just two sides of a gang. You don't really have a choice to be a gangbanger or not. They will draft you in, what you be about, your people, your folks. If you're nothing, they will violate you in, meaning they will beat you up and make you be a part of that crew. But for some reason, when you're a graffiti artist, you're left alone. Not necessarily respected, but you're left alone, and I think it's because these same kids all understand what this is. Because as a graffiti artist in this generation, you were a kid.
Absolutely, yep.
Kids teaching kids, which is something that you mentioned when we were talking. Kids teaching kids, and hopefully we can talk about that more in the future. And speaking of kids, we recently were part of a fundraiser for somebody by the name of Reynaldo Sanchez who passed away, and you knew him. Mm-hmm. And he was a big influence to you. You've been a huge influence to the graffiti community for the youth, both in this generation and in generations from the past. And we'll share some of these images with you now and share a little bit more about yours and people like Hate that have passed on. Okay, here we start. You want to talk to us about this piece?
This particular one is just a self-name, my name, TSEL. This is on a Wall Street Journal newspaper. I like reading newspapers still to this day. That's kind of my style. However, I still use them because it's just fun to use as a paper, as a medium. So I like, using anything and everything that's free, if it's paper, and then just to get a reaction from myself rather than anybody else. So I always do something different, just to get a response for myself.
And you mentioned that you have a series, your newsprint series.
Right. This is
part of it?
particular. Right. This is the particular series for called newsprint art that I started in 2003 after the Iraq War. A lot of newspapers, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Chicago Tribune, all were publicizing these, profound photos of the war. I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna start using some of these photos to draw on, and then I did that afterwards, and I've been continuing to do them up until now.
Look at this, the depth that's created.
Right, and I think what's important about some of these pieces, the newsprint art pieces, is that they still function as a newspaper. You could still read, the market quotes, and you could still it has a date on it, so it could still function as a newspaper and still work that way.
Yeah, that's really pretty. Okay, let's see. This keeps hiding away. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Oh, here we go. So this is a piece that you did with Solo. Solo is a solo writer from Chicago. Uh-oh.
Right, so this one was painted in Logan Square in 1994. The graffiti piece said "Roast," something that me and Solo put together last minute. He created the characters, and I did the letters. And the characters were supposed to represent dead presidents.
And I can't get the image back. So sorry.
That's okay.
We're gonna go back to that one. Oh, hold on. Maybe I could.
Well, it's just probably playing as a...
Okay. So this is the one that you did with
With Solo, right? So he did the dead president characters because you always keep dead presidents in your pocket. That's the interpretation of that one. This one was a TSEL piece made last summer on Flash's wall in Logan Square. This is part of that second piece of that same wall. This one was sponsored by the City of Chicago. I think it was DK's Department of Cultural Arts and Special Events filled out a grant. I gave him my vision. I told him my vision, and we made this huge Aztec art piece on Flash's wall. And this is, of course, these are just my style of letters that you could see previously. This is the Aztec sun from that grant piece sponsored by the City of Chicago. It was, again, on Flash's wall. It was done in the month of August. This was all done by the community. All I did was outline it, and I let the community go ahead and take over and paint it themselves. So it was a collective piece. And all I did was just clean it up afterwards. So this was done literally by about 20 or 30 people.
wow. So
They
you
painted
shared this
it.
opportunity.
Yeah, they did it all completely. I just outlined it. I just outlined the piece, and I told them, color it in, fill it in, do what you want to do, and at the end, I'm going to finish it off and clean it up. And that was the whole point, was have the community know what it's like to use spray paint on the wall to create art.
Beautiful.
And of course, this is all freestyle. My interpretation of the Aztec sun. Again, this is another newsprint series from the New York Times, the business section. I like using images that stand out. So once I see an image that stands out, I'll go ahead and put either Aztec art or my graffiti name on there, or graffiti pieces. And again, they're all freestyle, so I don't really think too much about where the outline is going to go. I just go ahead and start drawing, and whatever comes out, comes out. So that's always been my interpretation of drawing. It never comes to thought, it just happens. So once I see an image, I know it's what I want on there, how it's going to get done, and how it's going to look at the end, before it's even started.
And that is the magic of making art.
The magic of making art, right? You can create it before it's even done or even started.
Yeah, and this is a very simple yet very effective and strong piece. You have a lot of negative space, but yet you're creating an image that's basically covering the entire page, even though there's a lot of negative space within your fonts. So it's
Once
really
again, with
simplicity.
that, absolutely, that's, and this is what it is. It's breaking it down to simple forms, but again, giving you a lot to look at. Once again, that E is a
Choice of colors is great too. Against
Oh, thank you. I think the most important thing too is the lettering, and you spoke about the font style. And once again, the E is another example of a Chicago style letter.
It's
that would stand out more about it. If anybody else from the older generations would say, hey, what do you think? Do you think this is a Chicago style piece? Absolutely, look at that E.
Look at the E, and then you have things like the shines and the bubbles that are recognized from those eras.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And
I
the
really got that
movement.
from
There's true movement there.
the ABC crew. They've been they were making graffiti pieces before I even started. They were a big influence in the way I created and executed graffiti, and those are some of the elements that still show are the bubbles and the little little bits and pieces. I always knew that that was something that was done in Chicago lettering, and especially ABC crew. They did a lot of bubbles, a lot of.
And just for those of you watching at home, please remember that Flash ABC, who has been with us twice before, you can always check out his segments on our website. That's sharinghis.energygallery.net. So that is Flash from ABC, who he's mentioning right now was a huge influence to some of these early styles of graffiti. In here.
Okay, and so this is the end part of that Aztec wall we painted earlier last summer in August. This was all done the entire month of August. And again, this was a collaborative piece executed by the community, and I just literally just outlined it. And what I wanted to do with the background is leave it as is, because I didn't want to be too busy, because I knew a lot of people wanted to say, hey, let me do this, and I'm like, nah, stick with this piece, concentrate on this, that way you don't go around. And then it's very contained, yep, of course.
And yet you were still able to utilize a lot of different colors. There's the movement.
Right, and I had no contribution with what colors went inside.
Let's talk about this piece. Earlier we were mentioning some of the graffiti artists that are no longer with us as teenagers. Not too long ago we lost a graffiti writer, upcoming graffiti writer by the name of Yours, and here he is. You want to talk to us about Yours?
Okay, so the very first writer that I do remember passing away was in 1985. His name was Create. He passed away on the train. So that was my very first experience about somebody passing away doing graffiti art. And that's kind of been, it's always followed me throughout my 36 years of painting graffiti art. It's always somebody passing away that I knew, was close to. And he was another example of a friend that was just too young to leave us. His name was Yours. He was a really good, talented artist. He's really funny. He just started coming back out, and after his, staying, just in the background for a few years, and his friend encouraged him to come back out. So if he would have still been with us, his style, his development would have just grew and grew, and he would have been a really, really great contribution to the city of Chicago graffiti community. But he's not with us, so I painted a portrait of him using acrylics on canvas, capturing his profile and his image and the likeness of him. And I gave this to his best friend, E-Rex, for him to hang. And E-Rex was the one who took a picture of yours, so that kind of made it even more special.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that and for sharing this image and for creating it. Moments that are just not found anywhere. And this is an excerpt from another piece that you did for somebody else that we lost. And this is Hate.
Absolutely. Hate was with Create when he passed away in 1985. They were in the train yards. And he did pass away. And Hate also was a big influence in my life earlier in my career. He was a true dedicated graffiti writer. He was one of the first all-city writers.
And this is just, sorry not to interrupt you, but just so everybody at home knows, Yours passed away just last year. Hate passed away in 1989, just as a teenager.
Absolutely. He was really young when he passed away, right when, at his prime of his graffiti career. And Flash, once again, made a dedication on his wall to a lot of writers that passed away. So I dedicated this piece to Hate. This was done, I do believe, in September of last year, 2019. And it's still up there right now in Fullerton and Milwaukee, if anybody wants to go see this particular piece that I dedicated to Hate. Once again, he was a big influence in my life and to a lot of graffiti writers in the city of Chicago.
Thank you. There's something really beautiful about the graffiti and the hip-hop community that does this, keeps these memories alive. This is Yours again, 2019, passed away 2019. Then we just saw an image that was dedicated to those that we've lost, an image that was made for Hate, who passed away in 1989, but yet this image was created in 2019. because this community respects those that we have lost. This is hate again. You want to talk to us about some of these symbols? Sorry, we lost that last one.
The ones on hate, that hate sketch, I kind of wanted to make something modern looking. I don't know if I accomplished that. As with any graffiti writer, you get to develop your own style, and everybody knows your style. And if you try to do something different, they'll notice it. Everybody will say, "Hey, what are you trying to do?" And I try to do something different, but at the end of the day, my style it's going to be just that, my style. I can't really do anything about it. So I try to do that with the hate piece, and it was effective, but at the same time, everybody can still tell a TSEL style.
How about this piece?
This is another graffiti name that I have. I have several graffiti names. This one is Tizoc, T-I-Z-O-C. Tizoc was a 15th century Aztec emperor. He was poisoned in 1486, and I want to continue with his name because it almost sounds like Tizo. And it's funny that 500 years to the year he died in 1486, I started the graffiti name Tizo in 1986.
Wow.
So this is my other name, and I just, this is one of the walls that PC had, I think, on the northwest side by Augusta. This is 2017, I do believe.
Okay. Can you talk to us about this piece?
This particular one was painted in 2010 for there was a competition sponsored by S.H.E, I do believe. He is a Hawaiian graffiti writer. I think he was traveling around making a competition. So they gave us a set of 10 cans of spray paint, and the theme was Earth, to write Earth or do something with the letters. And this was my interpretation of the word Earth, and my style of what I included in Earth was, of course, symbol of my ancestors, the Aztec serpent in the bottom, and of course the Aztec sun in the center. And you can see some of the mountains of Mexico in the background.
Okay. And this is 10 years ago, so this is something that you've continued to do since you were basically a child, competing again. Here you are.
Yeah, and so I won third place. So according to
Not a blue
2010, no, I'm the third place graffiti writer for that time. So I'm bringing that down.
Just so you know. And then how about this piece?
So this particular piece I painted at my mother's garage in her house. This is a freestyle Aztec emperor, Quetzalcoatl. He was an important figure in my worldview. Of course, I painted him floating in a serpent. In the background is the mountains of Mexico, and then you can see the temple right there in the bottom. And this is, again, freestyle. I just decided to paint my mom's garage and see what I can do with some extra cans of spray paint.
And just so you know, if you've ever tried to use a spray can, you really have to practice to contain these lines. So to be able to get details as TSEL has done is just incredible.
Yeah, it definitely takes practice many times over. This particular piece
is a little different.
Very different. This one's sponsored by the Chicago Police Memorial Foundation for fallen officers. I think it was called Heroes of Horses, or Horses of Honor. That's what it was called.
Cool.
I
So you participate with a lot of like stuff with the city.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Another example of Aztec art. This background was all spray paint, of course, on canvas, and the foreground and symbols are made with markers. I like using Sharpie oil paint markers, and then those symbols of the date is 2 flint knife and 1 reed.
And these are more Aztec-inspired pieces. And this one it shows a little bit more of like an old school feel, right? Like 1980s type of feel for the B-boys. And just for everybody that doesn't know, B-boy stands for breakdancing boys, right? Is that
Breaking,
your interpretation?
bomber boys, yeah, B-boys.
All the hip-hop, and here we have...
Well, this is just an example of illegal graffiti. If you want to see something I've done, I'm afraid TSEL throw up. This one in particular was done across the street from Columbia College. 2014 was paid and sponsored by a company, and now the building is gone, and there's a condo there. But I was the first one to kick off the Wabash Arts Corridor.
Okay, thank you so much for being with us. We do have to go. That was like it. So thank you so much again for being with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Please join us again next week. Really paying respect to all these innovating graffiti artists and the true graffiti history culture. Thank you.